Hey folks, I'm JC from One Shot Adventures, and this channel is all about running great one-shot adventures and also short campaigns. And today we are going both post-apocalypse and retro with a review of Intrigue in Los Disneys, an adventure for GURPS that was released way back in 1987. But before I dive in some old school history, one of Steve Jackson Games' earliest successes was Car Wars, a tactical board game that took place 50 years in the future and challenged players to arm their cars with machine guns, oil slicks, rocket launchers, and blow each other away in the streets and arenas of the post-apocalyptic future. And even though Car Wars was a board game, it had some role-playing elements that built a really interesting world. Here, a grain blight hit the planet, oil ran dry, and another civil war split up the USA. Its states and cities collapsed into chaos, and while the world would eventually sort of rebuild itself with algae burgers, electric cars, and arenas, the highways remained very dangerous and the right-of-way belonged to the biggest guns. So the world of Car Wars was a cool blend of Mad Max and 80s futurism. And naturally, when GURPS was released in the mid-1980s, GURPS Autoduel was one of its first supplements, which detailed this cool post-apocalyptic world. And this was followed up with releases of the American Autoduel Association, or AADA, Road Atlases, supplements that would detail this dystopian world region by region. I'm still kind of sad that there were 10 AADA Road Atlases promised, but only 7 were published. What's going on with you Canadians? The third AADA Road Atlas was focused on the American South, which was overrun by gangs of the future. And most interesting was the state of Florida, which was hit very hard by the food riots, hurricanes, and the global warming of the future. The capital of Tallahassee was burned down, and the capital was moved to the remains of Disney World, now called Los Disneys. Florida is run by a dictatorial governor named Bart Legion and his paramilitary park rangers, which literally take their playbook from the German Wehrmacht police of World War II. Yep, Florida is run by a Nazi-inspired governor who lives in Disney World, and I'm just gonna let that sink in for a minute while this video gets demonetized. Each of the road atlases included an adventure, and the adventure included in this road atlas is Intrigue in Los Disneys. In this adventure, the PCs are challenged to join a cross-country truck race that goes from Arkansas to Los Disneys. But of course, it's not as straightforward as it sounds. Nope, this adventure throws the PCs into a dangerous terrorist plot, gang attacks, a rebel front, and a lot of Florida-style weirdness, trust me. So does this adventure still hold up almost 40 years after it was written? The world of Car Wars always takes place 50 years in the future, and it's weird to think that we're almost in the time where this adventure would have been imagined to have taken place. So is it still worth playing today? Or is it best left in the 1980s? Well, fasten your seatbelts and reload your machine guns and secure your cyberlinks, because not only am I going to give you a full review of Intrigue in Los Disneys, I'm going to give you GM some tips and tricks on how to run this post-apocalyptic adventure like a pro. Intrigue in Los Disneys was written by Steve Jackson, David Ladyman, and David Bowden, which is a lot of authors considering it's only 12 pages long. It can likely be run in 1, maybe 2 sessions, though GMs can easily flesh out the first part of this adventure, the cross-country truck race, into something longer if they want. The adventure takes place in 2037 as the world is recovering from the food riots. The PCs are all in Fort Smith, Arkansas, a bustling fortress town on the Arkansas-Oklahoma border. They're approached by Lisa Kitane, a promotions agent with an interesting request. 3 Florida-based trucking companies are pulling a stunt, a truck race to Los Disneys, with each truck driven by a beautiful model. They're hoping the race will bring glory and profit to these companies, and while the driver's already figured out and determined, well, they need some escorts and help to make the trip. So the PCs obviously say yes, they're hired on as crew, and they're allowed to spend about $75,000 worth of vehicles and weapons to escort their truck. In the world of Autoduel, this is enough money to buy a few good cars loaded up with the finest of Uncle Al's weapons and equipment.
That's right, folks. This video is brought to you by Uncle Al's, the place to buy your machine guns, Vulcan machine guns, Gauss guns, rocket launchers, micro missile launchers, wheel guards, wheel hubs, spoilers, air dams, and yes, we have the newest RAM plates. All that with Uncle Al's auto stop and gunnery shop guaranteed. Stop on by.
Unknown to the players, Lisa Catane is not who she says she is. She's actually a member of the Florida Front, a rebel group determined to free Florida from the grips of its dictatorial governor, Bart Legion. She's also a clone. Her original self tried to infiltrate Los Disneys and was presumed killed, and her clone activated. This is a normal thing in the Car Wars world where when people die, if they're rich, they can have backup clones. But she recently found out that her clone is actually still alive and being used as sort of a slave girl by the governor, which means that she can now better infiltrate the place as she is a known entity to the governor's guards and his security systems. Her plan is to catch the governor's attention using the big race as a distraction. She'll then infiltrate Los Disneys, rescue her clone, and do some serious damage to the governor. She doesn't want to kill him, but instead kidnap him, neutralize his clones, lock him out of his bank accounts, and then force him to announce free elections in Florida. It's a bold plan, and she'll need the PC's help, but she won't reveal this to the PCs until they're well into the trip. The truck race takes 3 days, routing through Jackson, Mississippi, and Atlanta, Georgia, and then finally onto Los Disneys, Florida. The truck race section relies a lot on the GM to make it shine. There are rules for getting ahead of the other 2 trucks, but since there's no direct dueling between the trucks allowed, because that would make a short race, there's little interaction between those trucks. So the GM has to include interludes to mix it up. The adventure suggests some events like motorcycle gang attacks and sabotages, but they're pretty generic. I really wish the stops use more of the scenery and the material from the book itself to make each one unique. For example, if you read about Jackson, Mississippi earlier in this guide, you'll know that it's known for a group called Crusade on Wheels, which are evangelicals that try to convert people at gunpoint. Yeehaw! You accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior? Woo! Amen, brother! Woo! It would have been fun having a run-in with some of these guys at the Jackson's truck stop or even on the road, but right now everything is described fairly generically. So I really recommend the GM go through the rest of the AADA Road Atlas and insert some things here and there to make this feel more like the South that it describes. But my favorite interlude is a very weird one where a biplane advertising a failing TV show called Al's Gals drops bikini models on top of the trucks. The PCs will think this is an attack, but it's not, it's just a commercial stunt. Another bit of weirdness is that there's a discount sign outlet on the way to Los Disneys, and players can stop and buy signs to confuse the other drivers. It's a little Looney Tunes, but my players had a lot of fun with that. As the race goes on, Lisa's plan begins to work. The governor of Florida starts paying attention to this big truck race. He is really delighted by the publicity it's bringing Los Disneys. So he invites the winner to arrive during the halftime show of a big football game and invites that winning truck driver inside for a reception with him. Now that, of course, is exactly what Lisa Catane wants, and so she fills the players in on her plan to infiltrate Los Disneys, and she asks for their help doing so. Now, this part of the adventure really requires buy-in from your players. It just assumes they'll say yes to this crazy mission that's going to take them deep in the heart of a plot to overthrow the governor of Florida. And it's a little unfortunate because the players also won't have spent much time with Lisa to build a rapport at this part of the game. She was following the whole time in a helicopter, so the players are probably not going to have a great relationship with her here. So either they're revolutionary types who just want to do it to take down the man, or she needs to reward them, probably with a lot of money, to go on this mission. So just know your group and expect to have to up the ante to pull them into her plot here. When I ran this as a one-shot, I included backstories for all the characters that they really hated what was going on in Florida. Some of them had family members kidnapped, others had a personal vendetta against the political situation there, but it made it a lot easier for them to say yes when Lisa revealed her plan. Eventually the trucks arrive in Los Disneys. It doesn't even matter who won the race because all the trucks are in on Lisa's plan. Rebuilt on top of the old Disney World and Epcot parks, the city is comprised of several giant domes. Each one is connected by monorails, and each dome has a very specific purpose. So you have the Pleasure Dome, the Treasure Dome, the Lone Dome, the Brain Dome, and presumably the Thunderdome. Can we get beyond Thunderdome? Yeah, we can. Lisa's plan is straightforward. The women drivers will distract Governor Legion and then knock him out. The PCs will need to sneak through Los Disney's and find a terminal in the Lone Dome, install a virus which will lock the governor out of his finances. From there, they'll rendezvous back with Lisa, threaten the governor, and make their escape. The easiest way to the Lone Dome is through the Capitol's steam tunnels, the one that run under the old Disney park. There are options also to take the monorail there, but they're heavily guarded, and honestly, they're not that described in the adventure. The steam tunnels, though, are really dangerous too, with animatronic ducks guarding them. They're old Disney characters that have been reprogrammed with machine guns and designed to take people down. There's also even a giant alligator that lives there, which is very appropriate for Florida, and it's randomly swallowed a time bomb so it like tick-tocks and the players can hear it coming. It's kind of like the one from Peter Pan. This part of the adventure felt a little too on the nose and a little too goofy for me. So I modified this so that there still were animatronic sentries, but they were guarding an area hidden in the old steam tunnels that was actually like a pit where the governor kept his most hated political prisoners. They were kind of like in a secret dungeon down there, and if he didn't like what they were doing, he'd feed them to an alligator that lived down there too. Just make it a little bit more dark and twisted, and I think it works. After the players make their way through the old steam tunnels, they'll arrive at the Lone Dome. I wish the Lone Dome was just a little bit more fleshed out. It's described as mostly an empty banking building. So when I ran this, I inserted some more spy shenanigans that the players could interact with to try to get to that mainframe that they need to hack. For example, I had them talk their way through the very annoyed receptionist who was not expecting them. They then had to hack the elevator to give them access to the top level where the computers were, where they ran into a crypto bro who himself was hacking the mainframe, stealing money from the governor, and the PCs and him didn't quite know what to do with each other. Basically, I made more things here for the players to juggle, so the end of the adventure wasn't just a sewer crawl, some fights, and then a hacking roll. I just made it all a little bit more complicated to build up the ending. I recommend you do that. The adventure also suggests some optional objectives that you can add to the PC's mission, like disabling Governor Legion's backup clones in the Bone Dome. I like this subplot, so I added that in. I also used that opportunity to create a nasty new villain. I called him Dr. Rafka, who was working with the governor to produce a virus that could sedate the population of Florida. Of course, he also enjoyed torturing the governor's political prisoners. He was notorious, callous, rich, and really fun for the PCs to take down. Just having one or two more known enemies in this last section is just going to add more personality to the adventure. I also added a bodyguard for Governor Legion who was like pretty badass and tough and well armed. So the players who had more military experience had to really think about how to take this guy down once they kidnapped the governor because they knew he'd be coming after them. I also placed Lisa's original body in Dr. Rafka's lab so the PCs could rescue her versus let Lisa do it herself, which is sort of what happens as written in the adventure. With the governor's bank account deactivated, his clones disabled, and Lisa #1 free, the PCs can force the governor into resigning and announcing free elections in Florida. The adventure gives a few different endings here, including, yes, the plan worked perfectly, Florida's free, but there are also darker endings like the rebels splinter, argue, and the state falls apart into civil war. Or the governor actually had a secret clone somewhere else in the state that appears and takes back control. I like that the adventure gives the GM some options here and kind of to twist the ending into what works best for his campaign. And that's Intrigue in Los Disneys. So what do I think? I have a lot of thoughts about this adventure. First, let's start with what I like. The structure of this adventure is solid. I like that it combines action and stealth and NPC interactions. The truck race is a great starting hook, and the ending, sneaking into the domes of Los Disneys, is tense and makes for a good finale if you flesh it out a bit. I also like that it does a good job showing players the world of Autoduel America. The road race takes them through several states, lets them use their armed vehicles, and Los Disneys truly feels dystopian and weird. And the adventure is fun and has a sense of humor. Sometimes it was a little bit too far for my tastes, but I liked a lot of it. Biplanes, dropping actresses on the players' trucks, alligators in the sewers of Los Disneys, the sign store. There's just a lot of plain old fun in this adventure. This really is a beer, pretzels, and dice chucking adventure. But the adventure is not perfect. I don't even think it's great as written, because I have some problems with it. First, I think that there are parts of this adventure that just didn't age well. There's a lot of hot babes with thin personalities in this adventure that the plot revolves around. Lisa, the truckers, Al's cows, the governor's use of pets, etc. Not everyone's gonna be bothered by this, and that's perfectly fine. This is kind of an 80s style adventure written in the 80s, but just know what you're getting into or be prepared to tweak it to be a little bit less 80s thirsty. When I did it, I actually just fleshed out the women truck drivers a little bit more, made them, have backstories and really help pull the players into that plot. They all had some reason for hating Florida and wanting to get revenge on the governor that just made them a little bit more complicated than models driving trucks. Second, and I think this is a bigger problem, is that I found the adventure just underdeveloped. You can kind of tell when I talked about it that I added a lot to this adventure just to kind of make it work better. I think as written, it's somewhere between an outline and a full adventure. I think 12 pages just isn't enough for an adventure that takes the players through 3 states and goes deep into a dystopian state capital with a villainous dictator governor and a Florida rebel alliance. It just leaves a lot for the GM to invent, especially in that last half of the adventure. What's the security like in Los Disneys? Doesn't the governor have a team surrounding him? What's going on in the football game with all those crowds there? What's in all those other domes? Your players will definitely go off the rails here and kind of push into the edges of what's described, and the adventure is just really too thinly outlined to help GMs. So GMs really need to go through it and just make a lot of notes in the margins or be prepared to improvise. And like I said before, I do wish the adventure used more of its world described in the book during the cross-country race. The road just feels a little generic, and it shouldn't. Tearing your way through the post-apocalyptic South sounds like a fun recipe for strong personalities, backwoods, Dukes of Hazzard style shenanigans, and cultural fun, but none of this is really included. Again, GMs can insert it themselves, but it does take quite a bit of work. Oh, and I also think it's important to add that this adventure does require you having your house in order on your vehicle combat rules. I've always found vehicle combat rules in RPGs tough to handle, and GURPS has gone through many iterations itself, from the Car Wars board game-like clone that was in the first edition of Autoduel, the Bring Your Calculators GURPS Vehicles rules of the 3rd edition, to the faster but way less detailed, and I feel less play-tested, versions of 4th edition. Things like GURPS Action help, but the point is to run that truck race right, you need to be comfortable and confident in whatever vehicle rules you're going to use. If there's an RPG that you think features amazing vehicle rules, I'd love to hear about it. Let me know in the comments below. So in the end, this is a pretty wild adventure. Its premise is fantastic. It has lots of fun moments, but GMs are going to have to prep and add their own flair for it to be a truly great one. If you like to be creative and tweak and improvise, your group's probably gonna love this one. But if you wanna run an adventure like straight out of the box, there's just not enough there for this to work really well. If you've run or played in any of these Autoduel adventures, let me know how it went. Share your war stories in the comments below, and I'll try to comment on each one. And while you're at it, if you enjoyed this review and want to see more like it, we'll go ahead and punch that like and subscribe button like you would the accelerator in the double drum. Until next time, I'm JC, and just remember, if you're taking your family to Los Disneys, buy a fast pass. Skip the lines, the alligators, and the animatronic weaponized ducks. Your family will say thank you for it.
Uncle Al's got the giving me. Shotgun